这个故事如果你听起来不累，那么你的听力水平在生活中是完全够用的。要持续提升英文，记得点击订阅按钮。我们开始吧。
The room was filled with heat, noise, and fear, and in 1 second, a single pull of a valve stopped a disaster that could have killed everyone inside. It was the age of steam, when iron machines ruled factories, ships, and trains, and power came from boiling water locked inside heavy metal walls. Inside those engines, fire burned day and night, turning water into steam, and that steam pushed harder and harder, like a beast trying to break free. The workers knew the danger well, because when the pressure rose too high, the engine could explode without warning, tearing metal apart like paper. On that day, the air felt different, thick and sharp, and the floor began to shake under their feet before anyone said a word. One worker saw the pressure gauge climb too fast, his heart racing as he ran to the side and pulled the valve with all his strength, releasing the steam with a violent roar into the open air. That sound was not just noise, it was life returning. A cloud of hot white steam rushed out, filling the room and blocking sight, but behind that cloud, the deadly pressure dropped fast. The shaking slowed, the metal calmed, and the engine that was seconds away from exploding fell back into control. Men stood frozen, some in shock, some in silence, all knowing how close they had come to death. The worker who pulled the valve did not look like a hero, just tired, covered in sweat, breathing hard as the last of the steam faded away. For moments like this, people began to use simple words to describe what had just happened. They said the engine needed to blow off steam. The phrase did not stay inside factories for long. It moved with workers as they left the noise of machines and returned to their homes at night. They used it to explain why they needed time alone after long hours of stress and heat. They used it when anger built up during hard days where nothing seemed to go right. The words painted a clear picture, because everyone had seen or heard what steam could do if it stayed trapped too long. Slowly, the phrase became part of daily life, not just for machines, but for people. Steam engines changed the world, but they also changed how people understood themselves. In the early days, many believed strong people should stay silent and never show pressure or pain. Workers were told to keep going, no matter how tired or angry they felt inside. Parents passed this idea to their children, teaching them to hide emotion and stay calm at all times. But life, like those engines, did not always stay calm under pressure. The more people held inside, the more dangerous that pressure became. Stories spread of engines that exploded without warning. Walls were broken apart. Lives were lost in seconds. And every time, people said the same thing: the pressure had nowhere to go. That truth was simple, but it was powerful. What is trapped will not stay quiet forever. People began to see the connection between those machines and their own hearts. A man who never spoke about his anger would one day shout without control. A woman who carried stress every day would suddenly break down in tears. A child who stayed silent in fear would act out in ways no one expected. These moments felt sudden, but they were not. They were pressure building over time. Just like steam, emotions need space to move, to escape, to breathe. Blowing off steam became more than a phrase. It became a kind of wisdom. It did not mean losing control or hurting others in anger. It meant finding safe ways to release what builds inside. Some people walked for miles until their thoughts slowed down. Some talked late into the night with someone who would listen without judgment. Some wrote their feelings on paper, then closed the page and let the weight go. Others ran, shouted, or sat in silence until the pressure dropped enough to think clearly again. Each small act was like opening a valve. Not all at once, not in a violent burst, but enough to stay safe. Enough to keep going without breaking apart. Enough to live without fear of what might happen if everything stayed locked inside. The lesson from the old machines was clear. Release is not weakness, it is control. The real danger is not the pressure, it is pretending it is not there. Think about your own life for a moment. There are days when everything feels fine on the outside. You smile, you work, you speak as if nothing is wrong. But inside, something is building, slowly and quietly. A small stress becomes a heavy weight. A small anger grows into something sharp and hard to hold. You tell yourself to wait, to stay calm, to deal with it later. But later does not always come in time. And when the pressure rises too high, it finds its own way out. Maybe in words you did not mean to say. Maybe in silence when you needed to speak. Maybe in a moment you wish you could take back. This is why the old phrase still matters. Not because of machines, but because of people. Because human hearts are not built to hold endless pressure. Because strength is not about silence, it is about knowing when to open the valve. Because one small release today can prevent a big break tomorrow. Because peace does not come from holding everything in, it comes from letting some of it go. So when your chest feels tight and your thoughts feel heavy, remember that old engine. Remember the heat, the noise, the rising pressure. Remember the moment before disaster, when everything could have been lost. And remember the simple act that changed everything, the valve opening, the steam escaping, the danger fading away. That same choice exists in your life, again and again. You do not need to wait until you are about to break. You do not need to prove strength by staying silent. You do not need to carry everything alone. There is always a valve, even if it is small and hard to find at first. And once you find it, you can choose when to open it. So ask yourself, not someday, but now. What are you holding inside? And how will you let it out before it becomes too much?
能以非母语者的身份专注学习到现在，这本身就是很棒的进步。真诚感谢你的观看。如果你觉得本期内容实用，点赞或留言让我知道你的想法，这对我持续创作非常重要。我们下期见。